Australia, you're listening to the BAP.
What the fuck is that?
The sound engineer would like a warning for anything like that in the future, please.
We are broadcasting from the Progressive Minarets. My name is Franco, and joining me is Brother
Shake Franco?
Jason.
It's
and
regressive,
Sheik Dean.
regressive brother Jason. I think it's the regressive brother Jason,
I
wouldn't
feel
it?
like that's what we're getting from that.
And that was me pulling out the progressive call to discourse. This is 2nd of October.
I didn't know. I thought it was an air horn.
Just trying to mix it up a little bit. Get the creative juices running with a bit of unanticipated religious connectivity.
Like a bit of chanting.
As I said, sound engineer would like a warning for any volume-based interactions in the future.
Any volume-based comedy. All right, let's move on behind that. I'm getting some very unimpressed looks from my experimental comedy. Douchebag filter.
And Coulter.
To say that I had the mispleasure of watching Spectre is probably a bit too harsh, but maybe just the boredom of watching Spectre, the
James
relatively new James Bond.
I haven't watched that
movie.
yet. It's on Netflix.
It is. That's why I watched it, but I don't suggest you watch it.
I only watched the first two of the new Bonds, Casino Royale, and then the one after that,
Quantum of
Solace, which was not that great.
No.
And then I skipped the one after that, and I've skipped Spectre.
So
I feel okay
Spectre
about
is a straight to Netflix release, is it?
No. It went to the cinema.
Did it? Oh, well.
Radiohead sing the soundtrack. Do they sing the soundtrack? Is it Top Job?
They may well have.
You was that sleepy. You didn't even get through the soundtrack.
Franco the Unimpressed was.
Don't get me wrong. They can name drop with Spectre. They had Ralph Fiennes. They had Christopher Waltz. So you're thinking, wow.
They
Especially
got
with
some actors with chops.
big chops. And you with Christopher Waltz playing Blofeld, I thought, awesome. This is going to be something. But no, you spend 3/4 of the movie waiting for Christopher Waltz to appear and do something, and when he does, he's woefully piss poor.
That's a shame. That's a real shame. I felt that way when I was watching Godzilla, and the guy who plays Walter White from Breaking Bad, whose name eludes me right now, was in the film. And I was like, it's going to be okay. You know, he's a pretty good actor. It's going to be pretty good. And within the first, spoiler alert, 5 minutes, he's dead.
Well, it
And
seems
then I
like
was just watching a crappy film.
in the small
Oh,
world.
that
That old chestnut, the old Steven Seagal on... what's the Air Force movie where he gets sucked up? Executive Decision.
where He's fired
Still-
out the top of the aircraft
yeah.
within
I
10
still
minutes.
love that movie because watching Steven Seagal just sucked out.
So let's not dwell on that.
Didn't we got sold on that A Field in England, remember? When
Yes.
He was meant to be, and he was
Yeah.
out of it in the first.
Yeah,
45
that was not a good film either.
It was. I can't tell if it was a good or bad film. It
I
was
couldn't
so
follow it.
bloody
I
weird.
think it was an unusually
Surrealist.
surrealistic film.
So let's not dwell on that rubbish for too long. Let's move on to something that I'm hoping you can fill content in with, because
You've
I
got
haven't
none?
seen this show yet, but I'm hoping one of you two guys have seen it and
Maybe.
can provide feedback. Netflix, Luke Cage.
I haven't watched it yet. It's come out.
Oh,
It looks really good. I've watched the shorts, and it's on my list of things to do very soon.
I've watched the first episode.
Oh,
I tried to convince my lady friend to watch it with me, and she was like, "I don't want to watch that." And it's like, come on!
As a matter of fact, it was actually recommended or suggested to me by my lady friend, because she said, out of that last series we watched, that was the best character in it.
I know.
So,
Actually, no, because Kilgrave was pretty good as well.
no, she liked Luke Cage. She said it was the most.
She likes strong black men like yourself.
Clearly.
did your lady friend
And
have
bald.
an intense dislike for the female lead character?
I think so. Yes.
Yes. Validation. It's not just a Franco problem.
No.
There's universality in her.
In Jessica Jones or
Yes.
Jessica Jones. Yeah.
I mean, she's a troubled individual. I don't think you're supposed to be like identifying with her and going, "I wish when I grow up I'm more like her, superhuman, strong, and an alcoholic."
Oh, actually, I wouldn't mind that.
I didn't have an issue with her character flaws. I just had an issue with her.
Do you know like Kristen Ritter as an actress?
I don't know, just something. I think that sort of nonplussed hipster.
So I'm used to her
Any-
in
no,
Bitchin'
listen-
Apartment 23. Have you watched?
No, I
Bitchin'?
haven't.
That's quite funny. And from that role to this role, to Jessica Jones, which is her next role, is quite a distance as an actress to come. I found.
Okay. Luke Cage was, as I said, I've only watched the first episode, and
He's not in Hell's Kitchen, is he? He's in.
it was a bit slow to begin. But I know Netflix, and I know they're built to be binge watched, so I'm pretty sure there's some action coming up very soon.
Yeah. Apparently, Netflix has been suffering outage issues. It's been that popular. Luke Cage has been so popular. Their services had issues in the States.
Oh wow!
My Netflix had issues yesterday. Like I just couldn't get things to like it would start and stream, and then when you got out of a episode of whatever you're watching, it would be like,
Actually, we had a drop. Oh, I couldn't figure out if it was the Chromecast acting up.
No, I think it's Netflix freaking out a little bit.
Yeah.
That's how popular Luke Cage was.
Well, I know the Nerdist has a major hard-on for it, so I'm guessing it must be pretty good.
Yeah,
right.
As I said, it was okay, but it was a bit of a wind-up sort of episode, so they were building
Look,
stuff up.
I'm expecting big things.
There was a lot of exposition, a lot of...
I've read reviews of it, and the reviews are like, this is the best one they've done yet,
Oh, wow.
which is a big call, considering that Daredevil seasons 1 and 2 have both been great. Jessica Jones was fantastic.
Pretty good. Yeah.
And just a point of order, Jason seems to think I have a problem with all female leads. Case in point,
Whoa,
Orphan
why are you
Black,
gonna bring that
love
up?
her as
Why
a
you gonna
lead female character.
Who's that?
I can't remember her name.
Tatiana Gregory.
I can't remember her name, but you like her a lot.
She just won an Oscar, an Emmy for it,
Yes,
rather.
finally.
Yeah, Tatiana. I think Tatiana Gregory or something.
Tatiana Maslov or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, from Orphan Black.
She's fantastic. Anyone that can act against themselves in the scene with themselves, it wins. They should get more rewards for what they're doing.
Anywhere up to 6 times.
Yeah, like it's really good.
Yeah.
And also managing to keep those characters in your head and separate and not mess up the act. Because she has accents for her characters, right?
Yes.
They have different act. Like, it's crazy just to be able to switch context like that.
I mean, you got to say her Russian accent is terrible, right? I mean,
Is it better than yours?
Let's be honest. No,
Show me your Russian accent.
Perhaps not, but I don't need to.
Wow.
Because I don't feel like I just roll that stuff out for people.
I heard it was
like
fantastic. I heard
So
people
that
like it.
sounds like something Trump would say.
yeah. But I mean, that is probably the only down point of any performance she's got on that show is her Russian accent's a bit off. That's
Glad you weren't presenting the Emmy to Tatiana.
Yeah, you got to remember though that
need to work on your.
you got to remember
Russian
though that
accent.
they're clones. Maybe it's a deficiency in the clone. They can't master Russian accents. It's just a limitation of the technology. You know, the cloning process is not quite perfect.
Maybe she was from a satellite Soviet state, so maybe you just
Yeah,
need to
maybe
pick
it's
up
maybe
the
you're
Georgian
maybe you're
accent.
being racist.
What
Maybe
I'm
it's-
thinking is a bad
you just-
Russian
did
accent
you
is a
just
very good
assume
Georgian
her
accent.
nationality, bro.
I don't think it was assumed. I think it was established. Anyway.
I don't know.
I've just done an amazing Trump pivot from my disliking female lead actresses to hating on Jason. I don't know
You
how
did
that
well.
happened.
You did well.
Well
So
For the record, I don't dislike female lead characters. Only Jessica Jones.
you don't like lead characters, but actresses? How do you feel about actresses?
He hates him.
Because you didn't even specify that. You're like, for the record, I don't dislike
For the
lead female
record,
characters. Mrs. Doubtfire, great
female
character,
lead
great character.
actresses.
Tootsie, great character.
I'm
Yeah,
going to shut up whilst I'm not a hit in any way, shape, or form. I'm opening out the floor to douchebag filter.
Yeah, man, I just watched the Rob Lowe roast, Comedy Central's roast of Rob Lowe.
Yes.
And because I wanted to see what the fuss was about, because everyone was talking about how Ann Coulter was paid out on so heavily, and then how awful her comedy was. And it's pretty damn funny stuff. I recommend people out there check it out and watch it. Jeff Ross is weird as shit as always, dressed like Prince. That didn't really make any sense to me. But Jimmy Carr is one of my favorite British comedians, and he was amazing. He was just on fire, just burning everybody to the ground with these horrible lines, delivered with comedic precision.
It certainly didn't feel like Rob Lowe got the worst of the comedy up there. I think.
No, I was saying to Jason before the show, the only part I thought that Rob Lowe probably suffered through was the fact that his wife and children were there, and his children were like, I don't know, somewhere between 15 and 20. And they were paying out Rob Lowe for sleeping with a 16-year-old in 1983, and for I think his character, one of his characters in his movies was called Soda Pop, and they said it was because in the 80s he was 90% cocaine. 90% coke rather. 90% coke was the punchline, which I thought was very, very good stuff. But no, Ann Coulter just got like served over and over and over. The C-bomb was dropped on many occasions. Jules stood up as a feminist and said she couldn't support any of the things that were being said, but as someone that hates Ann Coulter, she's massively in favour of what's going on right now.
That's right.
I mean, pretty much all of them pretty much said the most terrible things about Anne. Like, pretty much you're in league with Satan.
Yeah.
You're a horrible person, you know.
Yeah, she just sort of weirdly smiled and took it. Weirdly smiled.
She's been taking it for a long time, that criticism. So I imagine her skin is possibly, as frail as she looks, her skin is possibly
It was the way she took. So she just sat there smiling awkwardly. Whereas Peyton Manning, when they were paying on him for being like missing a chromosome or being what a Down syndrome boy looks like when he grows up, like he was just laughing and having a good time. He was really, really like taking it in the right spirit. With Ann Coulter, like, you could see her was just like bouncing on her arm, and she's like, "I'm going to kill everyone in this room."
Well, I think she obviously went into a situation which is outside her niche right-wing circle and learned a lesson about life. I was listening to a podcast.
She goes on Bill Maher's show all the time.
So the non-professional comedians who are on the roast get paired up with a comedian to work on their material. And I listened to a podcast with a comedian that was teamed up with her. And pretty much
The Joe Rogan podcast, wasn't it?
Yes,
Yeah.
and
I saw it as well.
he was saying that they had all these self-deprecating humour lines,
Yeah.
which would have been great, funny, and she went, "No, I'm not going to do that," and she wrote her own material, and you probably would have seen it famously bombed.
It didn't. I mean, someone made the comment that it was probably the only bombing she couldn't blame on Muslims. But it didn't bomb, because I heard it was terrible. And when you're watching it, like, for someone who wrote their own material, it didn't bomb as bad as it could have. Like, there were a couple of jokes that landed okay. It could have done with a bit more polish. She basically used it as a front to push her new book about Donald Trump and how we need him as a president, and trying to convince people to come on board to the Republican ideology, which I thought was quite interesting, but just not the right audience for it.
How does that zing Robert Downey Jr. pushing her book?
Yeah, I don't know. She made a joke about David Spade being the only good Spade or something, which was just like, some of those ones when they landed, you're just like, Jesus, she didn't just say that. And then she made another one. She made another joke about gay men, and then the room was just like quiet. You could hear a pin drop. Like, both of them were not good jokes, and they were just horrible to people. But I mean, you're supposed to be horrible to people at a roast. You know, you're supposed to be horrible, just not horrible to a whole racial demographic.
Yeah, that's right. You're supposed to be horrible to a person,
Yeah,
not to a people.
yeah. So what do you do? What do you do? Like, she I think, look, it wasn't terrible. It was not unlike Donald Trump's performance at the debate. You know, that was not as bad as it could have been. And called to on a roast, not as bad as it could have been. Like,
Yeah, indeed, we haven't hit the bottom with Donald Trump yet.
no, he's still
It can
digging.
get worse.
Is that what we're going to slide into now? The debate? Unless you
well,
got more filterage?
No.
Oh, no, I'm done with filter. I was just wanted to get in the sniffles joke. But,
Well, let's move on. So this week we got to hear Donald Trump for the first time parry and joust with Crooked Hillary.
and she's a professional at debating as well. We
yes.
should note, like, she's a practiced professional debater, and I think that obviously Hillary won. You know, I think anyone watching that would take away from that. Like, Hillary really
If you
knew
were
what she was doing.
judging it on professional debating technique, yes, obviously.
She knew what she was doing, and he fell for a lot of her traps.
Yes.
He kept walking into these ones where he was talking about himself, bragging about his abilities as a businessman for not paying taxes, bragging about his new resorts. Like, when Donald Trump talks about himself, I feel like he loses voters, and she made him do that a lot.
Yes.
Oh, he was happy to as well.
Oh, no, and that's mean.
Yeah.
Like, it's his major weakness. He will talk about himself, and it costs him.
They've obviously assessed
Respect
that.
the American
They've had teams of people working on his weaknesses, and they've seemed to have figured him out because she rope-a-doped him into all sorts of things all night.
You know,
Yeah, no, I agree. The other thing that I felt was interesting, though, is you could see that Hillary had obviously been taking people's advice, but like, you need to smile more.
Oh no!
Some of those smiles she was giving just looked really fake and weird.
You know, when people want to show like a graphic of Hillary Clinton, they don't want to be flattering.
Yeah.
They show those maniacal smiling ones of hers where
Yeah.
and it's really unfair. And they put, but there seems to be so many of them out there because she's not a
And
natural
and watching
smiler.
the debate, there were a few, and sometimes it was genuinely good. Like when Donald Trump tripped up, and she would just smile. She wouldn't say anything. She would just like give this like almost a laughing grin. And I was like, hey, that's a legitimate moment where you're happy. And then at other points in time, she'd just like sit there and pause and kind of smile awkwardly, and you'd be like, what the fuck am I looking at?
That was written.
Is it
that
a Stepford wife moment here? Like, has the software glitched?
that was a scripted smile.
Yeah, scripted smile. And
here.
I thought that was the biggest weird thing. Like, if you were just listening to the debate, you wouldn't have taken that away. But like, Hillary didn't look as comfortable smiling as she could. Not only have to look comfortable smiling, but every time Donald was acting, he was genuine. Like, every reaction he did was non-scripted.
Including his little outburst about after Alicia Machado was
Wrong.
wrong.
He just interrupted her so many times.
Wrong.
And then there was one time when she went to interrupt him. He's like, "Excuse me." Like, it's like, "Oh, she can't interrupt you, but you can interrupt her whenever you want." Donald, that's wrong.
So will that lack of debate etiquette impact his base?
no, not at all.
No, not in the slightest.
I was thinking very hard about this, and like, you know, on one level, I mean, the debates are intelligista porn. You know, the majority of Americans aren't watching the debates; they're just hearing the snippets crafted with whatever media stream they listen to. So,
Yeah.
you know, obviously, the intelligista journalists reviewing it will go, "Yeah, Hillary won," and yeah, if you're looking at it from debating technique and the actual responses, yeah, she
I think that
outgunned him. But from a personable level, like for the first third of it, when Donald was articulating what he presumed are the problems with America, it sounded very empathetic in terms of how he was going to fix it. There was no content and no substance. Whereas Hillary really didn't fail to articulate in a way that could connect with mainstream America in a lot of ways. Like she was talking about how everything that Donald brought up, her counter was it's a complicated issue, but which is true. At the end of the day, it's true. But she didn't sound very empathetic to the people who are suffering. It was very clinical when she would describe it. She got better in the latter half of the debates.
Yeah.
But in that first part, Donald sounded very, I'd hate to say it, but overall, I don't think Donald did bad for who he is.
No, I think he did. I gave him like a C plus.
I
Like
think-
as for Donald, like that was pretty good. I wouldn't expect much better for his
No.
first debate.
I was hoping for a lot worse, and unfortunately,
But the big thing for me was that he did get rattled at the end of the debate. You could see he rattled her, and the strength that Donald Trump has is that he's a strong speaker. People like positions of strength, and Donald is very good at being. It doesn't matter if he's right or wrong. He's just very good at being strong and like, this is what I'm going to do. This is what I think. You know where I stand. And when she rattled him, he stopped being strong and he started being weak. Bill Clinton famously said that when people are uncertain, they'd rather have someone strong and wrong than someone who's weak and right. And by the end of that debate, Donald was weak and wrong. And I thought that was interesting. If you managed to get through the whole debate as a Donald Trump supporter, you would be like, hang on a minute, like he's struggling here.
don't forget.
Oh, sorry, he was weak, wrong, and sniffly. That's what my full joke.
Don't forget there are a lot of Trump supporters or people open to Trump ideology coming from a point of confirmation bias. So, when he's starting to go wrong, they're actually thinking that's a positive.
Yeah,
I think that's a counted point.
The thing is, though, I think there's room for Donald to improve his argument and his style, and some of them are pretty easy to do, and there's not a lot of room for Hillary to get better. Like Donald, he needs to not talk about himself and how much money he's got and how much taxes he's evaded and how that's just good business. If he stops doing that and starts talking about inspirational stories of American voters who've been wronged by years of the Democrats, he could get real points there. Hillary pinged him for lying to the American public by not releasing his tax forms because his lawyer said don't do it, you're under an audit. He didn't ping her back about the emails at all. Like he didn't be like, oh, what? Okay. I mean, he did. I'll release my taxing when you release those 30,000 emails.
It's the perfect line, isn't it?
It's the perfect. Like he took him ages to get the point when she was like, you're lying. It's like, I'm not fucking lying. My lawyers say it's a bad idea when I'm under an audit. You want to talk about lying? How about you release all your emails? Like you're the wrong person to talk about lying. You're shady Hillary.
Yeah. I don't know how he could miss that opportunity as well. It's such a
he also needed to ping her about her reflexive secrecy. Like anytime something comes up, Hillary's reaction is to shun the media, hide away, pretend nothing's going on. He needs to talk about how, and this is like an obvious weakness of hers, like he needs to talk about what a Clinton 2 White House will be like. There won't be contact with the press. And he also needs to frame the debate, I feel, around how America is a country of self-made people, and Donald's a really good example of
Dean seems to be angling for a bit of a job on the Trump campaign.
I just thought...
He wants to...
And the other thing he should do
debate prep Dean.
Is just highlight... Do we really want another political dynasty? Do we want like Bush 1, Bush 2, Clinton 1, Clinton 2? Is that the kind of country we want to live in? Like there's really easy points Donald can make and he would convert voters. Yeah. Hillary has no defense against any of those points. And it terrifies me that like someone will tell him that.
Well, apparently he doesn't do the homework. He's unmanageable to some extent. That's what they reckon is the problem. Because or even if they reckon he did do preparation for this particular debate, he just has a bit of a ceiling on what he can absorb because he's just not been in that. He doesn't swim in those waters usually. The actual debate turnout, I mean, the pundits can argue about the technique and everything that happened, but it was all overshadowed by one particular issue, and that was the Alicia Machado one.
Yes.
Which probably would have run a news cycle and then disappeared even itself. So Alicia Machado was the Venezuelan Miss Universe contestant that won. And then back in...
so this is a competition that Donald Trump ran. He ran the Miss Universe competition.
And she apparently gained some weight and stuff like that. And, of course, they used Miss Universe for marketing and stuff. So Donald was particularly brutal about it, calling her Miss Piggy and Miss Housekeeping because she was Latina. And just was absolutely terrible. Anyway, she got named in the debate. And then there was an advertisement released immediately after by the Clinton campaign with an interview with her in it.
Wow.
And it was quite devastating. It was... she says he has none of the qualifications, whether they be humanitarian or empathy or anything like that, to be a president. Just absolutely none. And anyway, this got under Trump's skin. So you would have seen at the debate when the name was mentioned, he actually reacted and said, "Where'd you get that?"
Yeah.
Like he was caught off guard by it, and it was one of the things that probably rattled him the most. And then, so since then, 4 days later, when it was dying down and probably not much of a mention going to be made of it, he then at 3 a.m. tweeted for people to go and check out this sex video, sex tape of Alicia Machado. Turned out it wasn't her or anything like that, but this is what Trump does at 3 a.m. This is what a presidential candidate is doing at 3 a.m.
Was it Trump or was it someone working for Trump?
No, Trump's in control. The
That's
candidate.
a terrible
Remember
move.
that phrase? The candidate is in control.
Wow.
And then went in on a bit of a Twitter rant after that about just saying other things about Alicia Machado. And so this has all just kicked up this whole thing again. So she's probably going to be in there for the news cycle. But that was everyone seems to have forgotten what happened in the debate and stuff. This is what they're focusing on. Anyway, that's the American president, possible American president, is tweeting at 3 a.m. in the morning to go and check out the sex tape.
You know, as a progressive, I think the most unfortunate outcome of the debate was Trump didn't hang himself in it.
Yeah.
Like, he came out pretty much unscathed.
Yeah.
He tripped up with the ongoing Machado fiasco, but from a debating point of view, he was tired by the end of it, and obviously he was sick with something, but I would have liked to have seen him really come undone, which didn't happen, unfortunately. Now, it really upset me that he seemed empathetic in that first third where he was talking about the hardships people are going through. You know, he was talking nonsense. It's all about China. But a lot of people relate to that and think that's the bogeyman that's causing me my problems at the moment. Yeah. That's why I can't find a job.
It is a convenient boogeyman, though, because globalization has taken a lot of manufacturing jobs away from the West in general. And those jobs have gone to countries like China. Now, it wasn't the Chinese that made those jobs go there, but it is pretty convenient for Donald to be like, hey, that's where your jobs are gone. Everyone's like, hey, you know what? Fucking everything's made in China these days. They have taken our jobs. It's like, well, they didn't take your jobs. We allowed companies to outsource them by, encourage them to invest overseas and
gave them tax breaks.
But it's convenient, and it resonates with people that don't understand, the world as probably as well as, and that's the people Trump is targeting.
Which is where now he's made his tell, because he said it's all about keeping jobs in America, stopping jobs going offshore, which is nonsense. How can he stop that, really? And that's something Hillary.
He seemed to be advocating for tariff walls.
Well, you can stop it. There are ways of doing that. Tariff walls are ways that do that.
And now, I thought that was interesting when he was talking about it. I was like, wow, I've never heard an American politician in a long time advocate for that.
Protectionist. Well, it's just that you don't normally hear it from anyone, particularly someone like Trump. Because
most both sides of politics these days are like economic liberals these days. They're both interfering for government. Trump seems to be actually an economic conservative.
He never really articulated exactly how he was going to do it.
He's a conservative. He's a social conservative and an economic conservative. Okay, well, that's something. And it'll be interesting to see if they do try it. I don't know if they will.
Or whether he's just saying whatever it takes to get votes and then...
Yeah, the other thing I thought that was good was when he pitched it, when Hillary talked about the TPP, how she was against it, and he's like, you weren't always. This was the gold standard when you were working for Obama. And I was like, that could resonate as well. Like, people, if they're worried about their jobs, if they're worried about things going overseas, she does not have a good record on this.
I think what it comes down to is if Trump was a...
If he was halfway competent,
and he had a halfway competent campaign behind him, Hillary would be in trouble.
Yeah.
Would be in serious trouble. But he's
thankfully he's not.
Thankfully, he's unhinged.
But he is getting good advice from someone, because he went on the Jimmy Fallon show. Allowed Fallon to interview him, Trump to Trump, and that was quite funny and self-deprecating humour, and it presented him in this fairly positive light. And I don't think Hillary would do that. I don't think she'd go on and let herself be mercilessly mocked by a late-night TV host.
I don't think it was a heavy mocking, though, on that Jimmy Fallon show. It wasn't too bad at all, really.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, and Trump also is familiar with it.
It wasn't no Rob Lowe roast, that's for sure.
With Ann Coulter. Yeah, no, it's interesting to see. Anyway, I'm going to be watching obviously all of the presidential debates and then probably the vice presidential debate as well. I don't know if a lot of people are interested in that. I am genuinely interested in seeing how that goes. Okay, because Hillary, she might be sick. She might not be able to run the country, Jason.
She's got walking
Trump had
pneumonia.
sniffles. He probably had man flu.
Did we discuss this? Has anyone had walking pneumonia before? I've never heard of it before.
It might be an American name for something else.
Something I've just caught.
I mean, they call things slightly different words. Like they're biscuits or scones.
Tomato.
Yeah. They have weird things there. Like Trump. Hey, the other thing that came up during the week that I thought was huge, was Barack Obama's veto of the 9/11 bill that allowed people to sue Saudi Arabia being just overturned by the Senate and Congress. And in the Senate, it was 97-1. Like one person was defending Barack Obama, so the Democrats turned on him. Obviously, there's an election coming up on November 8, and you don't want to be like, I'm the one that voted against 9/11 victims, so I totally understand why. But even in the House, it was something like 348 to 77. Like, that hasn't happened. Like, I can't remember a presidential veto being overturned in my lifetime.
I don't. I've never followed politics, American politics, enough to know when the last one even was.
Yeah, it's pretty big.
I didn't even realise they could be overturned. I thought it was pretty much ironclad if he vetoes.
No, you got to get like a supermajority.
You got to get a supermajority in both the House and the Senate, and they got it.
And how often do you ever get something like that? It's just rare.
But I mean, like I said, the election is November 8, and you don't want to have people running against you going, I support 9/11 victims. This fucking guy, the incumbent, voted against them being able to sue Saudi Arabia.
But that's a really interesting turnabout as well. That law getting through is now. I remember seeing an interview recently where they were talking about how they're trying to go through the motions and whatever processes we have there, and bringing charges in the international court, criminal court, against certain people. And like for example, this case they're taking it to Saudi Arabia. There's certain countries that are trying to do things like bring it. You might remember that George Bush famously didn't travel to Switzerland because he was afraid someone was going to arrest him there.
Yeah,
and things like that. So actually trying to make some real world consequences.
He's probably afraid of his own shadow, though.
So is the legislation they're proposing to change, does that, and from what I'm hearing anecdotally, it suggests that would enable other people to sue America possibly. Yeah. So perhaps people under the Pinochet regime might have a bone to pick with the US.
I think this law specifically names 9/11 victims and specifically talks about Saudi Arabia, though. It's
a precedent for international law.
You're absolutely right. But this particular law is very focused.
But it'll be interesting to see what happens. And also, the more interesting thing about this for me is we could be witnessing the devolution of the petrodollar. Like, America's no longer going to be coming to Saudi Arabia's aid. Now we're going to be potentially seizing your assets you have in our country because we don't feel like we need your oil.
I think the petrodollar is probably shaky at the moment, regardless. But
well, this, like I said, this could be the nail in the coffin where they're no longer friends.
Yeah,
well, I mean, friends don't crash planes into other friends' buildings, I guess. So maybe they're never friends in the first place.
Back to domestic news. There was some terrible storms in South Australia this week, and unfortunately, South Australia found itself without power for most of Wednesday.
I'm pretty sure that was a failure of renewable energy, Frank.
That's exactly what I read.
Unfortunately,
PM Turnbull, he knows his stuff.
Our noble Prime Minister, Malcolm Turnbull, found the boogeyman in all of this.
He did.
Renewable energy.
Could you imagine Tony Abbott coming out and saying that while there is still a national disaster on?
Yes.
I can't see him. He's not that ham-fisted. I mean, to be fair, the guy's a volunteer firefighter as well, so like he understands.
No, you are remembering him wrong. He is that ham-fisted. This is the guy that ate an onion.
I know, I understand that. I just feel like if there's a national disaster on, even Tony Abbott wouldn't say.
But I'm surprised Turnbull did it. I'm genuinely surprised Turnbull did it.
I am surprised. Well, I feel like Tony would have maybe got this right.
Yeah, I think he would have at least paused a little bit and probably sort of gone.
Don't forget, Peter Credlin would have been there going, "No, you fucking don't, Tony."
Barnaby Joyce started the hoo-ha where he was arguing that South Australia had become too reliant on renewable energy, wind in particular, and said...
the wind is unreliable in South Australia, it turns out. It blew down 21 power poles.
He said its lack of coal-fire baseload power had contributed to the blackout, and obviously Turnbull decided that was good footing to launch his attack on renewable energies and renewable targets that some of the states have been ambitiously targeting. Unfortunately, it wasn't a problem with actual load of power. There were no lines.
Yeah.
It didn't matter if it was renewable or coal.
Three transmission lines came down and 21 poles, yeah.
And that was what was disappointing about the news stories I read, because it was so glaringly obvious that these were transfer pylons that went down and had nothing to do with the generation.
I love all the pictures of it. They're just like completely bent over as well. You know what no one asked? What about all the private companies that have the maintenance contracts on these? What's going on with that? Because when these were maintained by the government, did 21 poles fall down in the past? I mean, it's a freak storm. I understand it's a freak storm. But there are private companies that are responsible for maintaining these lines, and they haven't. Malcolm, maybe we should investigate the efficacy of the private sector when it comes to maintaining power poles.
So what has the coalition got against renewable energy? What is their beef that they're so driven to
well,
go
Joe
against
Hockey,
it?
Joe Hockey hates wind power.
But
well,
because they're accepting...
are ugly, but...
They're
then
accepting so much fossil fuel money.
But it's obscene that they would, in the midst of an emergency in South Australia, go on the attack of a totally unrelated issue to the actual South
It
Australia
seems to be
experiencing.
very tone deaf, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It was pretty spectacular. It's pretty spectacular. Did you see Daniel Andrews, the Victorian Premier, in the paper on the weekend, who labelled I'm going to call him the unpopular Prime Minister these days because no one seems to like him. He said he was a peddler of ignorant rubbish and that his timing is worse than Tony Abbott's. I think that's where I got my Tony Abbott joke from originally.
Worse than Tony Abbott.
Yeah.
Wow.
I thought that was pretty good. Yeah, a peddler of ignorant rubbish. That's a good line.
And when you
Paul
benchmark,
Malco.
it's Tony Abbott, but yet you're referred to as the
Yeah.
one ignorant rubbish.
You're not reaching the low Abbott bar.
And it's interesting though because the right wing of his own party, Malcolm's party, want to see him out and replace him with Tony Abbott. So Malcolm goes on the attack, attacking the left, pointing out this is a problem for your energy. Turns out it's not, and everyone's like, "You're the peddler of ignorant rubbish. We'd rather have Tony back." Both sides of politics now are like, "Can we get rid of this loon and just can we please have Tony Abbott back?
When your own
Bring in the onions."
Yeah, maybe Abbott's a conservative whisperer and he just understands that onions are the way to go or something
Yeah.
like that.
Maybe that's his way of shutting the fuck up. When he wants to make a comment about something inappropriate, he's just like, "Just give me onion. These are lovely."
Because
Nothing to say.
This is going to make me look less stupid than what I was about to say.
Yeah, I'm just going to put this in my mouth right fucking now.
The notion that Malcolm Turnbull is a self-made millionaire, I'm finding highly dubious from that. From
I mean,
this point
it's
on.
up there with Trump, isn't it? Getting a $1 million loan from his dad, and then I think it was 13 other $1 million loans over the
What,
course of his
Turnbull's a
boyhood
blue
to
blood
get sorted out.
from way back, is he? He's not like a... he's
No,
not-
look,
he's not
to
new
be honest,
money?
I think he's a self-made millionaire, but not a clever one.
Oh,
not if
right.
he can peddle
Maybe
out
a
that
lucky
sort of
one.
nonsense.
Yeah, lucky, just a fortunately right place, right time. Yeah, I don't know. The other thing that came up in the news for me today, Rodrigo Duterte, the Filipino president, compared himself to Hitler. He compared himself to Hitler, saying that if he had the opportunity to round up and execute the 3 million drug users and peddlers in his country and slaughter them, he would. He wants to be like Hitler. You know that Nike ad from the 90s, like Mike? If I could be like Mike.
Be like Adolf.
Duterte's version is, yeah, thanks
could
for
be.
stealing the punchline.
Sorry. Sorry.
I was going to sing, man. It'd be better than Frank.
The thing to bear in mind is, though, in Asian countries, they're more, from a World War II perspective, they were more focused on the Japanese being the evil of all evils. What was happening on the European theatre wasn't as big a deal for them.
Hitler was,
Yeah, I know. Genocide's not a big deal. Don't worry about genocide. Don't worry about it.
Hitler was Japan's comic sidekick.
Yeah.
But it was just interesting on that note. Don't know. Let's not generalize about Asians necessarily, but I happened to see a documentary during the week that was about the fascist movement in Mongolia.
Right.
I'm not kidding, because they're very nationalistic. Because the Chinese are coming over and buying up all of Mongolia and bringing in their own workers to mine the place and stuff like that.
What they want to do here.
And so there's a right wing backlash that's come up, and yes, they're very pro Hitler. Hitler was a great man. And I'm hearing they're interviewing Mongolians, and I'm going, how can these people find anything in common with Adolf Hitler? It's crazy.
You know, people look at Alexander the Great and say he was a great man. And he was not a great man. He was a murderous cunt.
Same as the Khans.
Yeah, history remembers him, as he's a nice guy. When you meet him in Civilization, he's got a smile. He's like, "Oh, I'm a fucking all right dude." He's not. He was a great.
He was moody. He was an
terrible,
alcoholic.
He was a terrible shit.
He was
right?
an alcoholic
and the same
with
to some
rage
extent
issues.
is true with the Khans. People look back and they're like, it's just they were with crazy empire, but they fucking slaughtered people.
Yes.
They burnt cities to the ground. So maybe Adolf will be remembered. We're in that age where we had that threshold now where not enough people remember the war and remember the Holocaust to go, no, he's a shit. Everyone's like, hey, sometimes people die in wars.
That generation is dying off.
That generation is
remembers
dying
just
off.
how
The
bad
point
it
now,
was.
it's like that is a terrifying thought. But the fact that Duterte is like, I want to be like Adolf, that is, I mean, he's succeeding really. He's only killed 3,000 people. He's like the Diet Coke of Adolf Hitler right now. But he's getting there. I also like the way the Department of Defense keeps coming out and saying we have an ironclad alliance with the Philippines. Sure you do, buddy, but what are the CIA up to? There's got to be a countdown now.
Well, weren't they saying, I can't remember who was saying it, that regardless of the government of the time, America will have a long-standing and continuing relationship with the Philippines?
Yes, they continue to say this, but I imagine the CIA feel differently, and they will soon see Duterte replaced if he continues to behave like a fucking lunatic.
Unfortunately, he's very popular in the Philippines electorate.
Yeah.
I did like deviating a little bit, maybe dropping back into douchebag buff, but like I was watching Narcos and
Yes.
the involvement of the CIA in that, where all these things were happening, and then suddenly the CIA guy pops up and says, "Yeah, I've been kind of doing this, and you guys have been sort of fucking things up."
Yeah. This hasn't been great.
He just steps out. He's this unassuming old guy with a beard. He looks a bit of a hippie, and he's the one who's masterminding everything. It was.
But I mean, that's all it takes, right? A couple of CIA operations start poisoning his popularity at home, and then you have him executed accidentally. And then the guy who executed him gets executed before he sees trial.
Of course.
That is their way. Then there's no mess to clean up, no one to testify.
I've got some new Pepsi Pope news. I know that will make you happy, Dean.
Diet Pope.
Yes, Pope F was in Georgia, not spreading the good news under any circumstances due to their...
Which Georgia?
Georgia.
As in on the border of Russia.
Right.
Aleppo. Not spreading the good news in any way, shape or form, being that Georgia is 99% Orthodox Christian and not overly fond of Catholics. He held an unusually small outdoor mass to 3,000 parishioners. Shikdin, I imagine you were all over that. How did you feel about such a low-key, intimate mass, as opposed to the usual fanfare of stadium Pope F tours?
Well, you mean in his soundproof box that he drives around in? Look, I think I don't know, man. I have mixed feelings about religion at the best of times. I think it's good that he tries, and he does try. But I don't know what the story's about, so I don't want to say too much with that, because you're gonna paint me up to look like
A for effort, Popey F. A for effort.
No.
Big ups, Popey.
It was just interesting to
Well,
see.
I mean,
went somewhere that he's not necessarily wanted or.
I imagine there's no direct flight from Rome to Georgia.
Probably not.
He comes from being a priest of the people anyway, looking after. He's from Argentina, and he's always involved with the poor, and he's continuing that. And one of the interesting things I found is when he came to serve as Pope, he got rid of all of the ridiculous beds and chairs and gold and all that shit that was in there. He's like, this is not what the church is about. So I think it's interesting that he's continuing to do that, to encourage people to maybe take the money they've got and spend it on actually looking after the poor and delivering services and helping the world. That being said, I can understand why people don't like the Catholic Church.
Yeah, probably having
I totally get it.
your chief finance guy, George Pell, with a huge shadow of decades of alleged inappropriate behaviour is probably not the best call.
How's he feeling these days?
Not good enough to travel.
I don't think he can travel ever until he dies, unfortunately. So you would think, right? And just back me up on this, because he's a man of God. So if I wanted to travel and get to court to answer my accusers, I would just pray to God.
Put it in the hands of God. And
Just
jump on a plane.
trust in Jesus to see me through, because I need to be vindicated.
Yeah.
And yet he doesn't do that, which is interesting, right? It implies either he is guilty or he doesn't have a lot of faith in his
It's a lack of faith.
almighty Lord and
It's a lack
Saviour.
of faith.
Well, I find his lack of faith disturbing, to quote the Lord and Saviour Darth Vader. The Sith hate everyone uniformly.
From one Messiah to another.
I've got one more story, if we can move on from the Diet Pope.
Bring it on.
So this week, some of the leaked NBN Co documents have turned out to be true, and they've decided that they're going to backflip on their plans to make use of the Optus hybrid fiber coaxial network that the government originally purchased for $800 million, and instead scrap the network. Like the original plan, to be fair, when the government bought it for $800 million, they bought it to get the subscribers to move them to the new fiber to the node
Premises
fiber to the premises service, and then they were going to scrap it. And then, when Tony Abbott and Malcolm Turnbull's communication minister came in, they decided that was not their plan, and they were going to keep the network and they were going to use it to deploy services. Turns out the original assessment of this stuff is garbage and can't be used was accurate, and they're going to scrap it again. So Mitch Fifield took to the media to point out that this is all Labor's fault. Our communications minister, I should admit, Mitch Fifield is the Liberal communications minister, the foil to Stephen Conroy, who has unfortunately
What was his chain of logic?
Well, Labor bought it, so it's their fault. They wasted the $800 million, and don't worry about the fact that we've put plans in place that were reliant on this being there when we've done our mixed technology rollout. This is all fine. There's nothing to see here. We're always going to scrap it. I just find this interesting. I find it interesting that they continue to balls up such a major infrastructure project. And I find it more interesting that it was Malcolm Turnbull's plan to balls this up.
It's because
He invented the internet.
I guess they always had the plan that if anything went wrong with it, because they weren't too happy about doing it at all, if anything went wrong with it, they just blamed Labor. That's their go-to move. Clearly, it's Labor's fault.
Yeah.
We didn't want this plan.
Well, you know who nearly lost in the election? Labor Labor nearly lost in that election. Who made the Senate unworkable? Labor, also Labor.
Global warming.
Yeah, Labor, actually. Yeah, who actually knocked out all the power in South Australia? Labor.
Grassy Knoll, JFK.
Labor. Yeah. Bill Shorten, actually, I've heard, was in Dallas that day. So, interesting. Anyway, that's all I've got for this week. Anyone got any more stories?
I'm done.
Oh, sweet.
That's a wrap.
I've been Jason, and he's been Franco, and he's been Dean.
Good night, Australia.